before we break this down from every angle, I want to make the point that I made last week abundantly clear. And again, we have a lot of new listeners. We have a lot of new people downloading this show. And so I want there to be no confusion. People who have listened to this show, people who have come across my work, people who have known my work for years, they will attest to this. I have never once said that I believe that we have to have college football, that we need it. But what I have said is that the idea that the Big Ten would cancel this season last week without even attempting to try it, without even having a single padded practice, it is ridiculous. And it is ridiculous in the sense that it's not even as though the reasons that they used made particularly good sense, right? The reason that they use is that it's all about player safety, okay? And if it's all about player safety, then let me ask a couple simple questions. And I asked them last week, but I just want to reiterate my stance because I don't want anybody saying that Torres is pushing for football and he wants kids to get sick and he doesn't care. It's not that. It's that the reasons that they made the decision to cancel didn't make sense. If the reasons that they canceled made sense, I would be bummed, but I would get it. I get, frankly, why the Pac-12 canceled their season. When half of the campuses aren't open and a bunch of schools can't even get into their facility to work out, it makes it hard to have a football season. I understand why the MAC and the Mountain West and UConn and UMass and New Mexico State have canceled their football season. When you can't afford to test your players safely, it is not only not fair to you, it is not fair to your opponents. So I understand why some things have happened. What I don't understand is what has gone on in the Big Ten, where the logic for canceling the season was very simply this. It's about safety issues. It's about safety issues. Now, nobody has come out and explained what those safety issues are. Kevin Warren, the commissioner, has not come out and explained what those safety issues are. Not a single school president that I have seen has spoken on the record about what those safety issues are, but it's safety issues. And where the frustration from people in Big Ten country have come from is it doesn't make sense. Because if it is about safety issues, as I've discussed over the last week, then let me ask you one very simple question. Why are 13 of the 14 campuses in the Big Ten having in-person learning for their students, for the majority of their student body on campus this fall? As I've said before, it's not every single campus that has 100% classes going in person. Every school is a little bit different. I believe Minnesota is like a 50-50 hybrid. I believe that Iowa is no class over 49 students is allowed to take place. Basically, if it's 50 students or over, it goes exclusively online. And so it's not as though we have these big 300 lecture classes everywhere in America in the Big Ten, but when you have 13 of 14 campuses open for in-person teaching, it doesn't make sense that you can't play football. It also doesn't make sense that you can't play football when you're saying it's over safety, when you are now going to push to the spring and potentially have 2 seasons back-to-back. And I give Jeff Brom, the Purdue coach, credit because he did put out a proposal, play 8 games in the spring, play 10 in the fall. You play only 18 games. It's not that much more, but you can't tell me it's about safety if instead of playing 12 games, maybe 13 over the course of a season, you are instead going to now squeeze 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 into a single calendar year. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense because football is an inherently dangerous sport. It is an inherently dangerous sport, and so you can't say it's not safe over this virus without having a single padded practice, but then you're going to play. And so that has been my stance all along. That has been my stance late last week when I recorded the last podcast, and apparently somebody agrees with me. And when I say somebody, what I really mean is the parents of the Big Ten. Because the parents of the Big Ten have come out this weekend, and it is scorched earth, okay? If you have not seen all of these reports that have cropped up over the last couple days, here is what you need to know. The parents of the University of Iowa football players really started this, I believe, maybe even as early as Friday, putting out a joint statement. I don't know if every parent signed, but essentially it is a big group of them saying, we want answers. We want explanations. We want a Zoom call with Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, explaining what it is that why we canceled this season and what are the health risks that you refuse to tell us about, okay? If it's really about this heart issue, then you have a responsibility to tell us, but you also have a responsibility to tell the rest of the sports world. You have a responsibility as the NBA plays and the NHL plays and Major League Baseball plays to tell them. It doesn't make sense that you have these crazy, secretive, super important medical documents and you're not sharing them with us. These are our children. These are our children's lives who could potentially be at stake, and we need to know what the concerns are. But if there aren't really concerns, if there aren't really medical concerns beyond what we already know, then you need to let our boys play. That was what Iowa's parents said essentially earlier this weekend. And then, oh, by the way, not sure if you saw, Ohio State's parents said the same thing. Then Penn State's parents. Then Nebraska's parents. Then Michigan's parents, spearheaded by Christian McCaffrey's brother, who, of course, plays quarterback at Michigan, Dylan McCaffrey. His mom spearheaded the Michigan campaign. And so now the Big Ten has a giant cluster. A giant cluster. And let me say this before I get into all of the dynamics of it. I give the Big Ten parents so much credit, and I will tell you why. It is because, as I have told you on this show before, I believe that this narrative has been hijacked over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, dating even back into the middle of July, early July. And what I mean by that is this. Throughout the offseason, obviously, look, the conversation has changed a million ways, in positive ways and negative ways, right? Like in March, we thought we might never leave our house again. In April, it was kind of just craziness. What's going on? We don't know. By May, it felt like there were some positives. By June, players were back on campus. Early June, we start having positive tests when players return. Everybody freaks out. Things calm down. On and on and on and on and on. But by about early to middle July, I started getting a sentiment from the parents that I talked to across college football. And it wasn't just the Big Ten, but it was all across the country. Is that we actually feel like our boys, our sons, are being taken well care of on campus. And in many cases, as we've discussed on this show, they're actually safer with the school than they are with us at home. Because we have grandma and grandpa living with us. We have 3 other younger kids all sharing a bedroom. We have 7 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. It's actually safer with my son back at school. Now, not every parent has expressed that. Not every school has done a spectacular job handling this situation, but the vast majority of parents have felt that way, have said that, have said, I feel safe based on what I know now, letting my son play football. That's great. That's good. That's awesome. And that was the sentiment that I was hearing all summer. And you can go back. July 10th, I put out a tweet that said that. It is in my timeline. I just reshared it over the weekend. July 10th was the first time that I was saying, you know, the parents I talked to say the kids are being taken pretty good care of. And the parents have been saying that. The parents have been believing that. And there has been growing frustration from the parents over the last couple weeks of like, why is this not being talked about? Why is this not being shared? Why is the media only talking about positive tests rather than the University of Michigan where there were 893 tests and only 11 players test positive? What about Notre Dame that's done hundreds of tests and it's only a handful of positives? What about Oklahoma that had a bunch of positives when they returned to campus and then when they were in that bubble-like environment, basically had 0 positive tests. And we're going to get to Oklahoma in a minute because there was some stuff that happened there this weekend. But the parents were like, why is this not being discussed? But parents have other responsibilities. They have other jobs. They have real jobs. They have other children to take care of. They have bigger worries than just what the media is saying about it or whatever. But I heard from parents like, dude, why is no one talking about this? The schools are doing a great job. I'm not saying I specifically talked to an Ohio State parent or a Michigan parent, but like those schools are doing a good job. I don't think anyone took this more seriously than these schools because the coaches, the player personnel people, everybody in that building knew what was at stake. And so the parents kind of backed off. They didn't say anything. They kept their mouths shut because they figured at some point that narrative would come out, that these schools are actually doing a really awesome job of testing, and we should celebrate it. We should say good things about the schools, and instead it never came out. And instead, not only did it not come out, did cooler heads not prevail, but the season was completely canceled without any really good explanation. And so first off, I give the parents so much credit for just putting their voice together, putting it on a piece of paper and saying, no, we're not going to let you steal the narrative. We're not going to let you say things that aren't true about the situations on these campuses. We do want to play. We do feel our boys are safe. We do feel like the best place they can be is playing football. And I give them so much credit for that reason. I also, although I've talked about it before, I give Justin Fields a ton of credit. For people who did not see this on Sunday, Justin Fields, the quarterback at Ohio State, potential top 5 pick, came out with a big statement basically saying, I want to play football. And it goes back to last Sunday with Trevor Lawrence and with Justin Fields and with Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle at Oregon. These guys came out, the biggest voices in college football, and said, we want to play. Justin Fields is doing more to save the season in the Big Ten than anybody. Because if Justin Fields doesn't speak out, it doesn't carry the same weight. If Justin Fields just says, you know what, I'm just going to go get ready for the draft, screw these guys, that you lose all of the momentum. And so I give that kid so much credit because he could be a millionaire. He could, if he wanted to, just start training for the NFL draft and put all this behind him and put this chaos behind him and put all these headaches behind him and just say, you know what, screw this, man. I'm out. I don't care. I'm not dealing with this crap. But he's being what we ask of our young men all the time, right? We talk about college athletes and you have a voice and use it and stand up for what you believe in. This kid is standing up for what he believes in, and I give him so much credit. And in the process, it's a lot like the parents. He's completely squashing this narrative that kids don't want to play, that they don't feel safe, that colleges are exploiting them. If colleges were exploiting Justin Fields, why would he want to play? He wants to play because this means something to him, because it means something to his teammates, because he knows how hard his teammates have worked to get to this point, and because he knows that his voice carries weight that others don't. And he knows that while he will be a millionaire in April, while he has a chance to potentially be, I think, he could be as high as the number 2 pick in the draft. I don't know if he's going ahead of Trevor Lawrence, but he has the chance to change the livelihoods of his teammates and teammates or guys that are on opposing rosters, right? Justin Fields is going to be fine. But there are a lot of guys that if they do not play this season, their entire livelihoods could change. Their entire lives can change. Joe Burrow came out last week and said, if I didn't play football last season, if we didn't have a season, I might be looking for a job right now. And so credit to Justin Fields because he does understand that, and credit to the parents for saying, no. You are not going to steal this narrative. You are not going to silence us. You are not going to cancel this season and not give us a good explanation. And so I give these parents so much credit, and I'll tell you this, I am so fascinated to see what happens next. First of all, I'll say this. And I know you guys know this because we have a lot of young people that coach youth sports, that coach college sports. We have a couple college basketball coaches that I know listen to this show. We got people that work in sports, and sometimes it's youth sports, sometimes you're a volunteer coach. But first of all, I'll tell you this. Hell hath no fury like some scorned parents, right? We've all coached, we've all umpired, we've all refereed, we've all been around our son or daughter's games. Woo! I'm just going to tell you right now. There is no worse group to be on the wrong side of than these parents. And I do believe that these parents are not going to give up until at the very least they get some definitive answers. And again, I give them so much credit because they deserve these answers. They deserve to know what's going on. They deserve to know why the season was canceled, and they deserve to have a face explain it to them, not some vague report that goes out through Twitter from a college football writer or whatever. Like, they deserve answers. They deserve real, definitive reasons as to why this season was canceled, why their sons' livelihoods have been changed, and what is going to happen going forward. Now, do I think it is ultimately going to work? I don't know. I saw one of these reports from throughout the weekend in which I think his name is Tom Dinehart, or he's somebody that's been around college football forever. And somebody asked him, or he asked somebody in the Big Ten, do you believe that there is a way for the Big Ten to save their season? And he just said, the person that he texted basically said, look, I don't think it's at all possible because a lot of people would have to admit that they were wrong on this topic. Now, I've heard varying things. I've heard other people say this is actually rattling the Big Ten office, and maybe there's a way that these teams can play in the fall. I don't know. I'm just telling you, I have heard all the whole spectrum of options going forward, but I kind of do agree with this narrative that a lot of people would have to admit they were wrong for this season to happen. But I give the parents so much credit because, as I said, they took back the narrative, and most importantly, and this is the part that I think we have to hit on, not only the parents, not only the players, the fans, the coaches, whomever, they deserve answers, okay? And not only do they deserve answers, you know who else deserves an answer on this topic? SEC football players, Big 12 football players, ACC football players. They deserve an answer on this topic, and here's why, and let me explain. It's because, as I said, the Big Ten canceled this season for vague, quote-unquote, safety reasons, and because of this big, sweeping, scary medical report that nobody really knows exactly what it was or what it said or what it means. And so I will even but I'll bring up Greg Sankey. If you remember, when the Big Ten canceled its season, Greg Sankey came out and said, honestly, the first line in his sentence was, I look forward to seeing what the Big Ten has access to that we don't, that allowed them to cancel the season. And essentially what he was trying to say was, look, if you guys really have something that is that scary that you have to cancel the season on August 10th or August 11th, then we want to see it because we want to keep our players safe. We want to keep our players safe. We want to keep the opponents safe. We want to keep the Big 12 safe. We want to keep the ACC safe. And so to me, that is where the parents are coming from, is they're saying, we just want an answer. Again, for the 1,000th time, I know I've said it, I apologize, but no one is saying we have to play football. It needs to happen. There's no excuse. But to cancel the season under these vague, safety issues and then not give definitives, that's not fair. That's not fair to the players. That's not fair to the parents. That's not fair to the fans. It's also not fair to players in the SEC, ACC, Big 12. You know who else it's not fair to? How about the NBA? How about the NHL? How about Major League Baseball? How about the MLS? How about the English Premier League and the Bundesliga in Germany? If there is some report that the Big Ten is sitting on that forced them to cancel this season, then yes, the public deserves to know. The players deserve to know so they can get closure. The parents deserve to know so that they can give their own sons closure. The fans deserve to know that their schools really do have the players' best interests at heart. But also, all these other athletes are taking the court, taking the field, taking the ice. And so, yes, the Big Ten does owe an explanation because, again, if it is that scary, if it is that bad, then I'm guessing, guess what? I'm guessing I'm guessing the NHL wants to know. I'm guessing the NBA wants to know because they are putting those athletes out there. And I understand there's differences between college and pros and there's players union and everything's negotiated and all that stuff. But I don't think it changes the simple concept that if the Big Ten has some piece of information that is so damning, I'm pretty sure the NHL wants to know it so they can make the smart decision going forward on the health of their players. And so to me, I give the parents so much credit. I give the players so much credit. I don't know if it makes a difference, but the one thing that we can see definitively, they are not giving up the fight, and they are not ready to go down without swinging, and I just give them so much credit because I do think the Big Ten owes us some answers. It was funny, right? And then we're going to get to the SEC in a minute. But I had a friend reach out to me, a listener of this show. Shout out, JT. I know you listen to every episode. JT asked me point blank, he's like, does the Big Ten owe everyone these medical documents? And at first I said, I don't know. But one, yes, they do, JT. But you know what else they owe? They owe a public face. They owe someone coming out, and they owe someone explaining why this decision was made and why it was the right decision. And I know I've said it 100 times, but if there was a logical, medically based reason to cancel the season, we deserve to know. But to cancel the season without a single padded practice and with so much vagueness is not fair. And listen, we're going to get into the SEC in a minute, but we are going to find out in the coming weeks as to whether we can actually play football with this virus specifically on college campuses. But to not give the players answers, to not give the parents answers, I'm just telling you, this is a cluster. It is not going away. The parents are mobilizing. The parents are coming together. The players are coming together. And I am just not sold that we have seen the end of this story. But at the very least, they are not going to go down fighting.